This is Dr. Sylvester. This tutorial is for Construction Management 2800 Foundations in Construction. It will cover creation of one of the alphabet required for the assignment, specifically the letter B. I have opened a new file, and the first steps in creating this letter is to set up the AutoCAD file. Setup requires 4 steps, the first of which is units. Type in units at the command prompt, hit enter. A dialog appears. Under length, we want to change that to architectural. No other objects require changing. In this exercise, we click OK. Once we set our units, we then set the snap and the grid. Snap and grid should be set based on your smallest recurring dimensions in the exercise, based on the class feature, that is 1/4. You can also enter 0.25 and the computer will notice. So as I type the word grid and I type in 0.25, notice the computer accepts it. The next step is setting the limits. I type in limits, hit enter. The lower limits will be 0, and my upper limits will be 1.5 inches, comma 1.5 inches, which is X and Y, and hit return. Now that we've set these conditions, we want to zoom all, and notice that my grid has now appeared and my cursor snaps within the screen. We can also turn off the grid by clicking on grid at the bottom. Notice where the cursor is below the command prompt. Or I can click snap. And if I turn off my snap, my cursor moves freely. If I turn it back on, it snaps to the grid. Please note the purpose for turning your snap on and off is to allow easier selection of objects and offset. Another toggle you may need to turn on and off is O-snap, and that refers to object snaps such as endpoint, and if you click on settings, endpoint, midpoint, center, and so forth. Again, if you right click on any of these and hit settings, you will set them up. For instance, grid, same thing. Or snap, right click settings, and you can set your snaps. Note that you can also alter those spacings, but we want to work equally in this case. Now that we have our screen set up, we want to make our first element, which is line. L is all we need to type in, or we can type in line. The first line will be drawn 1, 2, 3, 4 units down, and the next object will be 1, 2, 3, 4 units across, as well as 4 units across this way. Okay. Now we need to use the offset command to create the additional items that are parallel and equal to these 2 items. In this case, we type in offset, hit enter, and the offset distance we want to work with at this point is 1/4. Notice I cannot snap or choose the object appropriately, so I turn off my snaps and I select a line and then the side to offset, select the line and then the side to offset, select the line and then the side to offset. In addition, I want to draw my last line, and then I don't have to turn on snaps because my object snaps will choose those 2 endpoints. The next points or objects I want to create is the center spline, and we know that offset distance is 1/8 inch. Therefore, I offset those 2 objects 1/8 inch, creating a center spline here of 1/4. These are our line elements that we need. The next elements are required for the circle. The center of the circle has a horizontal and vertical position. The horizontal position will be located by offsetting by 1/16 of an inch our 2 negative spaces. Negative space being the voids in the letter B. The center of the circle, located vertically, will be created by offsetting 1/4 inch plus the 5/16 and plus the 1/16, which equals 5/16 from this edge. Notice 1/4 here and 1/16 there. Follow the cursor. What we draw now is a circle. We can type C, enter, or we can write circle. I also use the space bar as the enter key, and it invokes the command the same way. I can hit the space bar to ask for the previous command, and it also does it. So I will draw each circle. Notice the center. I drag it out to the object snap, which is perpendicular to this axis. Circle from this center to this axis. This is the creation of all elements. Our next step is to modify. To modify, we want to trim. Our first level of trim will be to create the overall straight items in the letter B. Therefore, I type trim. Using the command trim, you must select all elements that create the cutting edges required for the specific function or task at hand. In this case, I select all the outer lines and boundaries except for the right one, and I press the enter key, and then I begin to trim the elements I want to cut. And all you have to do is make sure you select. If you have difficulty, or if your snap is on, this task will be difficult. Make sure to turn off your snap if necessary. Next item I want to trim would be the two big circles. Make sure you select the two circles along with the upper and lower boundary lines so that you can trim based on those elements, and make sure you press the enter key once your selections are made, and then you can cut the objects. As you can see, the B is taking form, and I'm going to, for clarity, delete unwanted objects, and you will see the remaining objects to be trimmed. Type in the word trim again, enter, select. I'm going to select C for crossing, so I drag a crossing, and then I hit enter, and I can now trim the objects I do not want. Press the space bar, enter key again, and your B is complete. Once your assignment is complete, you're at the assessment phase. And as indicated in class, I will assess or grade your projects based upon how well they match my required objective. To do so, we use a command called pedit. Pedit is what modifies what's referred to as a polyline. A polyline is a linear element or curved element with multiple vertices. First, we type in pedit, and we click on one of the segments. Note, do you want to turn it into one? One refers to polyline. The answer should be yes. Now we simply join the segments by selecting them. We hit enter after the selection is complete, and notice in the command prompt it says 4 segments added. If you count 1, 2, 3, 4 segments have been added to the 1, which makes 5. Once you're complete with that portion, I will then select the object and check for the boundary being one entity. If it is one entity, then you have appropriately created and modified simple elements to create a boundary, and you will get full credit for that particular letter. The same procedure will be done to test the inner objects, and so therefore you can test your projects to see if they're complete. This ends the exercise for the letter B.